Oh, we forgot to report. If you come from an environment that creates where you're getting a lot of sunlight, your body does not need to make vitamin D as fast. Like I said, I'm just coming back from vacation. I was sitting on the beach. I got a suntan in Martha's Vineyard. It felt great. My body created it. The melanin cells acted up. So I needed my body it took longer for my body to create vitamin D. So now we're going through genetics, right? As your body, if you come from an environment that is less sunlight, your body needs to make more vitamin D. Environments that usually have less sunlight, those environments, the people have less melanin. Caucasian back people and things like that, usually lighter or white people have less melanin. What that does is allows your body to create vitamin D faster. Now, why is that important? Because if you come from Scandinavia, you may not get hours and hours and hours of sunlight where you're getting the direct sun on the skin like that. You do not get that. So it's incumbent upon them to make vitamin D fast. So they only need anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes to make vitamin D. Now, let's think about it. You're going more southern. Now you start going closer and closer to the equator. As you notice, the people who get closer and closer to the equator, their skin gets darker. Melanin protects your body against UV light. It helps protect your body against UV light. Why is that important? Because since it protects your body against UV light, it allows you to make vitamin D slower. Why is that important? Now, we're going through this. It's like 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 1 equals 3. So we're adding on. Why is it important for your body to make vitamin D slower? If you made vitamin D the same way somebody did in Scandinavia, you'll have vitamin D toxicity very fast. You come from an environment, people who are melanin-based people come from an environment that they're getting a tremendous amount of sunlight consistently. So if you are in an environment that is giving you a tremendous amount of sunlight, it's meant for you genetically to make vitamin D slower. Okay? You understand where I'm coming from with this? So you cannot compare the amount of vitamin D that you make as an African American or a dark-skinned Latino or a dark-skinned Indian or a dark-skinned Asian, whoever you want. You cannot compare yourself to someone who is lighter, who may be of fairer skin or who may be Caucasian or white when they come down to vitamin D levels. It takes you longer to make it because genetically your body is meant to be in the area where there's a lot more sunlight. It's not meant to be in an area like New Jersey or New York or Maine or Seattle or Connecticut where you don't get as much sunlight a couple of months out of the year. So you make vitamin D slower. So more than likely, those people who are melanin-based people are going to have lower vitamin D levels and where environments that they do not get enough sunlight. So we said all that to understand the genetics of vitamin D. Vitamin D is needed. You need cholesterol to make vitamin D. You need UV light to make vitamin D. And you can also get vitamin D from your food sources. So that's the good background on why vitamin D is important. Or no, just on how the body makes vitamin D and how genetics have an effect on vitamin D. Okay? So what do we need? Let's go back before we start going through all the benefits. Coming back from a vacation, coming back from getting a great suntan, and, the brother also got burnt because he thought he was fly. Trust me, you do need suntan. You do need, like, UV protection to a certain degree. Cocoa butter and shea butter doesn't work. I love the stuff. I know us black folks and us people of color think cocoa butter, shea butter fixes everything. Let me tell you something. It makes you cook, so especially your shoulders. It cooks. Okay, so shea butter is really good as a moisturizer. Shea butter mixed with sunlight is like grease. Okay, and think of your skin as being like chicken. Okay, so when it comes down to vitamin D, you need UV light. Okay, you need UV light. This is where you need sunlight. Also, there are food sources that make vitamin D. We're going to go through a little bit about that. And you need time. And it's also depending on I'm not even going to get on, but where you are in the world and how the sun rays hit you and all that. So you need UV light and you need time, okay, so your body to make that vitamin D. But let's get into some of the things that vitamin D is good for, okay? So there are surprisingly 10 different benefits. There's actually more, but we're going to go through it. They say vitamin D helps strengthen the immune system. Now, we are in the world of viruses coming out and, you know, people getting sick and all them other things. And they have found that vitamin D is one of the best for strengthening the immune system and stimulate production of T cells. Okay? Now, T cells, what are T cells? T cells are the memory cells. So once your body fights something off, it goes to the bank and say, hey, you T cells, you store on how the way we fight this cat. Okay? So next time we fight this virus or bacteria or whatever else, we remember how to fight this joke. Okay? So that's what T cells are. So vitamin D helps strengthen T cells. And it also helps fight against viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Okay? They also find that vitamin D can prevent certain types of cancers. Okay? So, like I said, vitamin D is also beneficial for preventing certain types of cancer. They find that certain types of cancers are not prevalent in areas that have a tremendous amount of sunlight. Remember I talked about that. And people whose vitamin D levels are higher. They found that vitamin D helps improve brain function. Now, I know that's something that a lot of people are unaware of, but that's why I keep telling you, vitamin D has a lot more than just, most people think of only bone health. Okay, oh, I get vitamin D, my bones are not bad. No. Vitamin D does much more than just affect your bones, but it's very good for that. But it has been shown to improve your brain function. It helps with protecting neurons and reducing inflammation in the brain. Okay, and remember the last time we talked about inflammation in the brain, we was talking about omega-3. So now we're talking about another supplement that's extremely important for dealing with inflammation in the body and in the brain, and that's vitamin D. Did you know vitamin D boosts your mood? A lot of people are unaware how vitamin D boosts their mood. So let's think about this. Most people, they actually have a disorder called SAD. Okay, I know it sounds crazy, right? SAD. Seasonal affective disorder. People get it in the wintertime. And what they have found is seasonal affective disorder, people go through bouts of depression, they feel lethargic, their mood is bad, they have no energy. And what they found is those people are low in vitamin D. And why is that? What happens in the winter? The days are shorter. You're indoor more. So you're not getting UV light that what? Well, let's go through this again. What does UV light do to the skin? It stimulates vitamin D production by using cholesterol and other synthesis. It's a whole stages of synthesis that in the liver, in the kidneys, that actually allows your body to create vitamin D, right? But it uses cholesterol to do that. But in this wintertime, you are not getting enough sunlight. You're covered up. You're indoors. The days are shorter. So people get SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And vitamin D has been shown to help improve that effect. So vitamin D is extremely effective for dealing with seasonal affective disorder or depression itself. Did you know vitamin D could benefit you in weight loss? I didn't know that. I learned that earlier today. Vitamin D has like a small little benefit when it comes down to dealing with weight loss. Vitamin D is one of the best for lowering your risk for rheumatoid arthritis. Now, let's go back. We're going to go back let's go back in time. Way back. That comes from Club Song. We talked about last time how omega-3s affect rheumatoid arthritis. Because it modulates and regulates the immune system, as well as it does what? We always talk about this. The number one problem when it comes down to dealing with disease is what? Inflammation. Let's go back again, okay? The number one problem, the number one causes of disease is what? Inflammation. 95% of all diseases starts with inflammation, okay? So we talked about last time omega-3s help dealing with inflammation. Now we're talking about how vitamin D's deal with inflammation. And vitamin D's help protect your risk against rheumatoid arthritis. Okay? So now another thing that helps with that is they also found that people who have higher levels of vitamin D reduce their risk of diabetes. Now, it may be other things that's involved in that, but we always talk about, let's go back again. What does vitamin D do? It helps deal with inflammation, helps deal with all those things. One of the things that they found that causes problems when it comes down to diabetes starts with what? Inflammation in what cells? The beta cells of the pancreas. Also, diabetes also affects the melanin in the pancreas. Okay, we're not going to get into the science of that, but we're going to go into that when we talk about diabetes one day, okay? We're going to have one of them shows where we're going to go into the science of diabetes and what nutrition affects. But think about this. We already talked about omega-3 having a positive effect on diabetes, and you know how many African Americans or people of African descent have deal with diabetes, okay? And vitamin D has been shown to help reduce the inflammation in the beta cells of the pancreas that can affect diabetes. So that's a positive thing when it comes down to dealing with taking vitamin D, okay? And they also found that vitamin D also helps reduce your risk of heart disease. Now, let's think about that. It makes sense. Let's sit back and really think about this. What is one of the things it does? Now, I know we keep saying this one thing about inflammation, but 95% of all diseases usually start with one thing in common. And let's go back over it. Inflammation. Inflammation. And what does vitamin D do? It helps reduce inflammation. And what is another thing vitamin D does? Let's go back. We just talked about this. I was just sitting on the beach in Martha's Vineyard. I was actually sitting in the inkwell, if you ever seen the movie. And, you know, I'm going to get off topic real fast. If you've ever been to Martha's Vineyard, one of the beauties about going to the inkwell was an African-American part of the island. And if you stay in the houses over there, the houses, everything is a little more bunched up, but a lot of the black folks own that part of the island. They own those houses over there. And they were not allowed to go to all the other parts of the island to go to the beach. The thing with the inkwell is that the water is not deep. You can literally walk out 30 feet and the water never goes past your hip. You go out 40 feet, the water's not past your hip. You have to go out. It's almost like you're walking on a sandbar. Okay? So you're getting out there and the water's not really deep. So that's a little history about that. And then I could go a little more about that. But I'm out there on the inkwell. I'm sitting down there and all them other things. And my body is beaming with ultraviolet sun, hitting my body. And I got on shea butter, cooking like chicken. Okay? And I'm sizzling out there and I'm getting this vitamin D and everything else like that. And I'm feeling great. And we already talked about what does your body use to create vitamin D? Cholesterol. What do we say? It uses what? Cholesterol? Now, let's go back. One of the things it does is help with prevention of heart disease. Why do you think it helps with prevention of heart disease? What's one of the main culprits of heart disease? When you go to your cardiologist, you go to your doctor, they go and take your blood, and they say, hey, Mr. Johnson, hey, Mrs. Henriquez, hey, Mrs. Muhammad, hey, Mrs. Jane, your cholesterol is high. You need to be on a statin to make sure it prevents you from getting heart disease. Your cholesterol is high. Well, cha-ching, one of the things your body uses cholesterol for is to create vitamin D. So your body, if you have too much cholesterol, it's a possibility. Now, I'm not saying that is, but if you go out in the sun more often, you know a lot of that cholesterol, some of that cholesterol is going to be converted to vitamin D. So that lowers your cholesterol level. And what do you get? Prevention of heart disease. So you see how little things lead up to other things? You know, this is why I love nutrition. Because a lot of times you can solve a problem by the basic things. It says helps with prevention of heart disease. Okay? Help with prevention of heart disease. How does it do that? It reduces inflammation. And what else does it do? It converts the actual cholesterol to what it is, vitamin D. So you're pulling some of that cholesterol out your blood and turning it to a nutrient. God bless us. It's a beautiful thing. Okay? So those are some of the benefits of vitamin D. Now, we went in. It's also really good for allowing the body to assimilate and use calcium and shoot it basically into the calcium and phosphorus into the bone. Okay, so that's how vitamin D does. Vitamin D actually takes this calcium that's floating around and its phosphorus and say, hey, come with me. Let's go to the bone where we can be used. Also, when your body creates vitamin D, it doesn't create a little bit at a time. It creates a lot at a time when it does it. Okay, and why is this? Because the body needs it for long periods of time and it wants to store it. It stores vitamin D in the fat of the body. It's a fatty vitamin. So it's stored a lot of times in the liver and things like that. So the body likes to store vitamin D. It's one of the fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin D is fat-soluble. Now, if you went to the doctor and you were low on vitamin D, in which they said 70% to 80% of all African American women are deficient in vitamin D, and up to 60% of African American men are deficient in vitamin D. I think the numbers are maybe even higher than that. But you have to take into account most people are indoors, most people are in an environment in which they're not getting sun all day, and then some people just don't like to get tan like that, you know. So it comes down to a lot of black folks not having enough vitamin D. And then they actually had research that came out maybe about a year ago that people who have higher symptoms when it came down to dealing with the virus that everybody was dealing with in 2020, their symptoms were greater. They had harsher and rougher symptoms and had a higher chance of being hospitalized when they noticed people who had lower vitamin D levels. And that was one of the things that they really actually prescribed, was taking vitamin D to actually prevent and also help reduce the severity of the symptoms, because they found that people who had higher amount of vitamin D levels reduced the viral load as well as help reduce their symptoms when it came down to dealing with the virus. Okay, so we have those couple of things right there. Now, you go to your doctor, they tell you your vitamin D levels are low, they give you a prescription, and you say, what the heck am I taking? So they usually give you a prescription of 50,000 IUs. What is IUs? IU stands for International Units. This is the old way of measuring vitamin D. It's still used. It's still used. It's still recognized, but they're slowly but surely converting from international units to milligrams. So I'm gonna look it up. Milligrams to into IUs, because I want to give y'all the proper conversion. So each IU, one IU is equivalent to 0.025 micrograms. So sometimes when you go inside a health food store or vitamin store or supermarket, they're gonna show it in international units, okay? And that's the normal. Now, when it comes down to going to a health food store, you find vitamin D from many different sources. Most of the time, it's mainly 2 to 3 sources. You'll find vitamin D3, that's number one. You'll find vitamin D2. What's the difference between the two? Vitamin D3 is it's an animal source vitamin D. Vitamin D2 is a plant source vitamin D. Okay, so why do they have plant source vitamin Ds and animal source vitamin Ds? Plant source vitamin Ds are not as effective when it comes down to absorption rate versus vitamin D3. Doesn't mean it's not effective. It's just not as effective. D2 is not as effective as vitamin D3. Okay? So when you go there, you'll see a lot of times D2 is cheaper. So a lot of times you'll find it cheaper. And that's the major difference. D2 is a plant source. So if you are a vegan, you are a vegetarian, and you do not want to do anything from an animal source, get vitamin D2. Understand this, though. Just take a little more than what you'll do in vitamin D3. The RDA says a person should get anywhere between 400 and 1,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. Okay? 400 to 1,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. If you are deficient in vitamin D, that's not going to do anything. Okay? If you are at a good level, that 1,000 is maybe enough just to maintain you, if that. Okay? So let's go back. The RDA says anywhere between 400 to 1,000 IUs a day is their recommended daily allowance, right? If you are deficient, it will not make a difference. If you took 1,000 IUs a day, it will not make a difference. That's why when you go to the doctor and you're deficient, they give you 50,000 IUs to take in a week. That means they're averaging about, let's do 50 divided by 7 is what? You're averaging about 7,000 IUs a day if you really think about it. So if you're asking to take 400, it's not even going to move you. And your levels are still going to go down. If you're taking 1,000, it probably keep you where you are, or maybe your levels will still go down. Okay? You need to be taking much more than that. If you are maintaining your levels are good, you could probably maintain your levels at about 2,000 IUs a day. If your levels are low, you should be taking a minimum of 5,000 IUs a day, plus you should be getting enough sunlight a day. Now, the average person should get, they say, a person who is non-melanin descent, people who don't have a lot of melanin, your fairer skin, or your or Caucasian descent, you can probably get enough vitamin D in about 30 to 40 minutes. If you are African, or if you are a melanin-based ethnicity, and that's not just African, because you can see them in the Philippines, you can see them in India, you can see them in South America, all these places, Mexico, people who are more melanin-based, they require more time, up to an hour and a half to create enough vitamin D. Now, we just went through the science earlier of how genetics affects your vitamin D levels. Okay? If you want to maintain good levels of vitamin D, you want to do anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 IUs a day. If you are deficient, you may need to go up to 7,000 a day, 8,000 a day, plus getting your vitamin D from the sun or the other food sources like eggs, milk, certain meats. You can get it from mushrooms. What's another good source? I think broccoli is another good source of vitamin D. Let me not say that. I know mushrooms are a really good source of vitamin D. That's in a plant source. And there's some other ones. I don't want to make a mistake. Fish is really good for vitamin D, but usually the animal sources are usually the best sources of vitamin D. When it comes down to what sources you get when you go to a health food store, you're going to usually find two sources of vitamin D in vitamin D3 form, not vitamin D2 form, vitamin D3 form, okay? You're usually going to find two sources of vitamin D, okay? The two sources of vitamin D that you're going to find, it either comes from lanolin or comes from fish, okay? It usually comes from lanolin or comes from fish. What the heck is lanolin? A lot of people are like, what the hell is lanolin? I read this all the time. What is lanolin? Lanolin is sheep wool. It's fat from the sheep. I'm going to tell you how they actually make sheep wool. I mean, they make lanolin, okay? The vitamin D that comes from lanolin. They take sheep's fat, okay, or sheep's wool, and there's some fat in there, and they literally shine UV light through it, and it creates vitamin D. And they do the same, but fish oil is different. They actually extract it from there, because usually fish oil has a certain amount of vitamin D naturally. But lanolin, specifically, they shine UV light through it, and it creates vitamin D, and they encapsulate it. Okay? So we went through the process of what vitamin D does, immune system, okay, bone health, brain health, inflammation, prevention of rheumatoid, prevention of diabetes, prevention of heart disease. And there was something else. It's probably more than that. I forgot something else. I said immune system, yeah. So those are the things. And then we talked about how the body creates vitamin D. We talked about how the brother went to Martha's Vineyard, went on a ferry, got a tan, shoulders are burning, and I'm still here. And you know how I got my vitamin D for the week. We talked about that. We talked about also where you get vitamin D from, the different types of vitamin D, vitamin D2, from plant sources and not as effective as vitamin D3 that comes from animal sources. And then we talked about what sources you get vitamin D3 from. So those are some of the benefits of vitamin D3. And I thought it was a good time to really talk about the benefits of vitamin D because we are on 4th of July weekend. Most people may be out there barbecuing and all them other things. I want you to get the sun that you need that is going to help you create this super nutrient that helps protect the immune system. Like right now, we're in the world where everyone is still wearing masks and things like that. And if you want to be protected, not only you need to do things that's external as wearing masks if you want to do those things, if that's up to you, but you need to look inside. And that's the best protection you can do. And one of the best things you can do is vitamin D for your immune system. You know, when you deal with a virus like a COVID virus, what makes it one of the things that's so deadly about it for some of the people is that it creates what they call this cytokine storm, in which your body, when it's fighting it off, it creates cytokines. They're like omega-6 base. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't want to say it wrong, but your immune system uses these like not antibodies. Give me the name. I can't think of it right now. I'm going to put you on a blank. But your body uses these, and it creates inflammation. And we talked about this last week. We talked about this not last week, the week before, how inflammation is needed in the body when it's fighting things off or repairing and all them other things like that. We went through this. We went through this whole thing on how inflammation is needed. Well, when you have a cytokine storm, it creates a tremendous amount of inflammation, and you're damaging so many different places around the body. Well, you need mechanisms in the body to reduce that cytokine storm. And one of the best things that reduce that is vitamin D3. That's one of the reasons why it's so effective. And we just talked about how they've shown in literature that people who had higher amounts of vitamin D3 were not affected. They did not have the same side effects or did not have the same symptoms as someone who had lower vitamin D3 when they were infected with COVID. So, that's why vitamin D3 is important. So now what I'm going to do is I talked for about 30 minutes straight. We had a good conversation about vitamin D3. I went through all of them, how much vitamin D3 you should be taking. Oh, and this is one last thing. I want you to understand this. When I say the RDA, that's recommended daily allowance, understand this. RDA is not optimal nutrition, okay? RDA is prevention of disease, okay? RDA levels are prevention of diseases that come from a lack of those nutrients. You want to prevent, what do you call that? Oh my God, I can't even think of that name right now. I'm just drawing a blank right now. Maybe because my shoulders are burning. What do you call that when you're lacking vitamin D? Rickets. If you want to prevent rickets, you need to be at minimum 400 to 1,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. That's prevention of rickets. That's what you use vitamin D for, prevention of rickets, right? That's what the RDA levels are for. The RDA levels are not optimal. You understand that? I want everyone to be aware of this. This is Nutrition 101. The RDA levels are not optimal nutrition. It's prevention of nutritional deficiency. You know? It's not optimal. It's just to make sure you don't get sick because you're lacking it. 60 milligrams of vitamin C is not optimal nutrition. It's to make sure that you don't get scurvy. 400 IUs of vitamin D is not optimal. It's enough for you to prevent rickets. Okay? So when you see everything is at 100% on things like that, that's just enough for you not to have a deficiency in those vitamins. It's not enough for your body to work at full strength or at optimum level. It's just to make sure you are at baseline. That's very important. So when you ever hear me say RDA levels, I want you to have that awareness that RDA levels does not mean it's the best dosage. It just means prevention of nutritional deficiencies. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the floor to anyone who has a question about what we just went over. And do you take vitamin D at this present time? And if you do take vitamin D, how much do you take? And what made you start taking it? So if anybody has a question about vitamin D, throw it my way. You know, right now, you see I got my little chain. You see I have a nice little white T-shirt on right now. I'm very laid back. I have gotten in at, I arrived back at home at 4 o'clock from a 4.5-hour drive back home. I'm really relaxed. I can answer any question. I even tell you what I had for dinner one day if you want to know. It was really good. It was a really nice restaurant. It was for my wife's birthday. I spent too much money. I'm listening. Go ahead. Say what you got to say.
Well, hi, my name is Latoya. I'm just joining in, and basically what you said was very interested, but I don't have a question at this moment. But thank you.
No problem, no problem. I'm glad you do you take vitamin D, Latoya?
I do. I take vitamins. Yes, I do.
How strong is your vitamin D?
Okay, but it's not just vitamin D by itself, to be honest with you.
That's cool. So you take a multiple vitamin?
Yes, yes, yes.
What's your ethnicity, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I'm black.
Okay, so you're a black woman. Okay. Do you work outside?
Do I walk outside? I'm sorry.
Do you work outside? Do you work outside? Do you get a lot of sunlight?
I get out more. Excuse me. I didn't get out much often. I just happened to come in as of now. Yes, I was out for today.
That's good. That's good. So make sure when you're doing this season, this is the best season. Spring, summer is the best season to get your vitamin D levels up. Why is that? Because your body is storing it and getting ready for the wintertime. It's like your body is collecting, it's like a squirrel. It's collecting nuts now and burying them for the wintertime when it needs it. Okay? So you want to make sure that you are taking enough vitamin D and you're getting enough sunlight. And you also want to make sure that your skin is actually being exposed. So you're getting some sun to the arms, you're getting sun to your legs, you're getting sun to your face, and all them other things, and you're getting that exposure. And you also may still want to take an extra vitamin D, maybe an extra 2,000 IUs right now, just to help your body store up, get its levels up. Because around November, your body is almost next to impossible to get enough sunlight to make enough vitamin D. So your body is hitting the reserves. It is hitting those reserves to keep you healthy. You know, so you want to get enough vitamin D right now. Your multiple vitamin more than likely has anywhere between 400 to 1,000 IUs. Most multiple vitamins give you about 1,000 IUs. Like I said before, that's just enough to maintain where you are. Right now, you want to get enough sunlight to make you feel better and get those vitamin Ds up. And maybe you should get an extra boost to maybe 2,000 IUs and all that. Because even though we get a lot of sunlight, remember, most of us are working. The highest point of the time where the sun is in the sky, we're indoors most of the time. That's why I asked that you work outside. Because if you're not, you're probably losing about 8 hours of sunlight a day. So you're not getting the most optimum amount of sun. You're getting certain parts of the sun, and not all sun is equal. Okay, not all sun is equal. The sun later in the afternoon is not the same as the sun in the mid-morning, and it's not the same as the sun at its height. Okay, so you may want to take an extra 2,000. Right now, I get sun, and I still take 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, plus my multiple vitamins. So that's for me, but I don't know what your levels are, but you may want to take at least an extra 2,000 IUs of vitamin D every day, along with your multiple vitamins, especially you believe in a black woman. And like I said, 70% of all black women have been shown to be deficient in vitamin D. Okay?
Thank you so much.
No problem. Anybody else have a question about vitamin D? Or do you want to know about the codfish I ate? The codfish was good.
This is Miles. How you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
All right, listen, my doctor, she wanted me to take another vitamin D because I don't eat red meat, and she was like, my iron. She said it ain't nothing to be, worried about, but she would like me to take some vitamins. So she gave me this vitamin D to take.
Yeah.
I already been taking vitamin D. So
Come on.
Because I had I had a good a blood workup, and she said everything was excellent.
That's good.
But my iron, but she worried, but the iron thing. She said it's nothing to be worried about, but She gave me another vitamin D because she see that I take vitamins.
Okay. Somebody else is talking while the brother's talking. Can you mute yourself? But I mean, if she told you to take an extra vitamin D, then that's nothing wrong with that. Like my concept with this show is to really educate people about nutrition and supplements in the health food industry and everywhere else. But it's also to make you optimal. You know, our goal is trying to be optimal at a balance. At a balance. Try to be optimal at a balance. I don't want you to be, you know, a breatharian. You know what I'm saying? I don't want you to be that, a guy who lives off the air. I want you to be optimal. You know, so if they told you to take an extra vitamin D and they said your blood work is good and everything else, take an extra vitamin D. What you got to lose? Only thing it's going to do is benefit you.
What is this fish? Okay.
I'm listening.
I was saying this fish you was talking about.
Oh, I had codfish.
There's a lot of fish. What kind of fish is you?
Oh, I would just eat. So when you go up to Martha's Vineyard, you know, you get a lot. There's a lot of codfish. You get a lot of shellfish up in the vineyard and stuff like that. They do a lot of seafood up there. I'm allergic to shellfish, so I can't do like the clams and all that other good stuff. But I enjoy a lot of codfish up there. So you know. But hold on, somebody else had a question. What else? I heard somebody else in the background was about to say something.
Abdul, hi, it's Carolyn.
Hey, what's going on, Carolyn? How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm glad
That's
you
good.
enjoyed yourself. Sorry you got that little burn there.
Oh yeah. You know the brother's shoulders is burning. You don't see it, and I'm telling you, it's burning.
Yeah.
You know when your shoulders burn when you put some oil or lotion or some type of cream and it stings. I said, oh, they got me. Oh, the sun got me. Okay, so.
All right. Putting some cool compress on there.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some. I already did some rose water, and that soothed it. And I put some aloe vera, a little bit of aloe vera gel on there, so I'm gonna be good to go. It's all good. You know, that's what happens when you think your skin don't burn. You say, oh, I got melanin. I'm good to go. Shea butter is good to go. And you know, shea butter makes you cook. So you learn that.
So here's you know, I do have a deficiency. It's when I see my doctor annually, it's usually in the fall, and then I do have a deficiency. So so she tells me to take the vitamin D. Now I was just taking I had like a CVS one, I think was 1,000.
Okay. Not enough.
I would take 2 of those.
No, it's not enough. If you have a deficiency, you probably need to go more.
Okay.
I will probably get you up to. I think you'll probably do much better around 5,000 IUs. Like I said, 1,000 to 2,000 honestly is just probably enough to maintain you where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So when you usually have a deficiency, and unless if you're really low, the doctor gives you a prescription for 50,000. That's about 7,000 a day. If you do the math, that's about 7,000 a day just to get you up. And sometimes you'll be on that for 3 months to slowly but surely get you up. It takes a while to get your levels up. At 2,000, go ahead.
For the 1,000, and she told me to take 2 a day.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I was doing. So that was 2,000 a day. But during the COVID, I was taking more than that anyway, just because.
Yeah.
But now I finished what I had, and I started taking. I have a longevity product now, and it's 5,000.
That's a good thing. 5,000 a lot of times is a lot better to get you. If you do the math, 5,000 is about 35,000 a week. That's good to get your levels up. Slow and steady. Now, understand it. It takes time. It will take you months to get your levels up because vitamin D is fat soluble. So your body, first and foremost, is trying to replenish the storage. You know, it's like, hey, we got to put some back in this tank. Our tank is literally empty. Before I can even get there, I got to fill up my reserves before I'm able to even get my blood levels up. So it takes time to get your vitamin D levels up. And that's extremely important. It takes time. So I would tell you to keep doing what you're doing, Carolyn. Keep it at 5,000 and make sure you get some sunlight during this time without UV protection, without sunscreen. I'm not sitting here saying go out there and get burned and try to cook yourself. What I'm saying is just give yourself time without UV protection because UV light is what's needed for your body to convert cholesterol to vitamin D.
Okay. Yeah, you make it sound like we take the vitamins and our body say, hey, look, I'm going to put you over here in the closet because winter coming, so I'm going to hook you up now. And that sounds cool, though.
Well, you think about it. It makes sense, right?
Like store it.
Well, remember, we come from an environment. People, it all depends on your genetics. If you are coming from an environment where your genetics was built to be in the sun long term, you make vitamin D slow. If you come from an environment where you were built to not get a lot of vitamin D, your body makes vitamin D fast. The more melanin you have, the more natural sunscreen you have, the more your body makes vitamin D slower. If you come from the less melanin you have, the faster your body makes vitamin D. But usually those people are coming from a climate that does not have a lot of sun. So they have to make it faster. It's like, we got to get this going because we don't know how fast we're going to get this, how long this sun going to be out. Let's make this vitamin D because we need it. But if you're coming from Sudan and the sun is on you 13 hours a day, it's like, hold on, slow down. We don't need this vitamin D as fast. Let's make this baby a little slower. Because if not, if we make it too fast, we got more hours of this, it's going to make us sick. We're going to get too much vitamin D. So let's chill out and make it slower. So it's just genetics. It makes sense to do it like that.
So is that one of the reasons why a lot of senior citizens move to Miami, down that area?
Well, think about this. I always say sometimes it just makes sense when you really look at what people do as we get older. First and foremost, as we get older, it's harder to make vitamin D. Vitamin D is much more efficiently made when you're younger than it is when you're older. Second of all, if you are talking about, what do we say one of the things vitamin D does? It does what? It helps the body reduce what? Inflammation in the body. Okay? So where do you want to go when you want to keep inflammation down? You want to go somewhere. Where? Warm? And sunny.
Good climate weather.
Good climate weather. And what's good climate weather? Where it's sunny and where it's warm. It's good for inflammation. And just think about it. If it's sunny, you're getting sun. Where do we say we get a problem at? Is a disorder called what? Seasonal affective disorder. It's called SAD. Seasonal affective disorder. It happens in the fall and winter because people vitamin D get low. You know? So if you want to go somewhere where you don't want to feel sad, you go somewhere where it's sunny out.
Yeah, because we do have long winters.
So it speaks for itself. Humanity. We're humans. We know what makes sense. Why are we going on vacation in the Caribbean, places warm and all that stuff? It makes you feel good. Why do you get activated in the spring and summertime? Most people get outdoors. You're active. You feel great. Well, just think about it. When the sun hits your skin, it wakes you up. Unless it's like hot as death. It's different. But when the sun hits your skin, it wakes you up. It gives you energy. It gives you life. And that's because it's transforming things in the body. We already said vitamin D aids in weight loss. And most people lose their most weight in what? The summertime. And most people gain what? Their most weight in the wintertime because you're in the house, you're inflamed, you're eating bad, you're lacking vitamin D. Boom. Common sense sometimes. Things are simple. We just make them complex. Everything is not a car. Some things are just a scooter.
Good evening.
Any other questions?
Dr. Hakeem. Yes, this is Dr. Hakeem. We're really enjoying this evening's broadcast. Just fantastic information, and it's so pertinent, and it's not only pertinent, but it's absolutely critical and vital to maintain proper health. So I really enjoy it. However, just a very, very few comments regarding the vitamin D. And because you're saying, a professor, your name is Abdul?
No, I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a professor. I got a degree in nutrition, but I'm not a professor. So I'm not to that level, doctor. I've just been working in the industry for about 28 years in the health food industry. So my specialty is talking about stuff in supplements and nutrition and things like that. But I am not a doctor, so I can always be corrected.
Oh, Allahu Akbar. I mean, God is the greatest. This is wonderful. Those are nothing but titles anyway. You're teaching us, and that's what's important, just disseminating the correct information, and that's what you're doing, which is just fantastic. But just a few observations. As you were mentioning with the vitamin D, the measurement that the conversion rates are changing from the IUs now to micrograms. We're seeing it more and more. But we're seeing that the 25 micrograms equal 1,000 IUs. So approximately 125 micrograms, it's going to be 5,000 IUs. And of course, 10,000 IUs is around 250 micrograms. It is switching, it is changing. However, there's a study that was done a few years back, a Spanish study with a small amount of people. It was a randomized clinical control study, and it shows that the 25-hydroxy vitamin D, which is, of course, the way that the physicians measure it, it's measured in the lab, the 25-hydroxy, if by skipping one step, when the liver tags on a protein, converting the 25-hydroxy to 125-hydroxy. Now, this was a study done in Spain a few years back, showing the effectiveness of vitamin D3 to inhibit and to prevent the coronavirus COVID-19. So what's happened in the lab, they skipped a step, just skipped the 125-hydroxy and went right through, regulated right into the blood serum. By that, it revealed that the people with higher amounts of vitamin D3 specifically, or vitamin D, then they were less likely, as you mentioned, to suffer from the cytokine storm within the lungs. Now, this was quite fascinating. It was a small study, but it was very, very revealing, and it's called calcifediol. Of course, the vitamin D is cholecalciferol, but it's the calcifediol study that skips steps. What we also saw is that internationally, the people who live closer to the 35th parallel, or the closer to the equator, of course, where the vitamin D3 is more sustainable within their system, it lasts longer, they're getting more sun exposure. These are the people who are less likely to suffer from any contraction of the coronavirus or any cytokine storming also. But when we look at the Central Republic of Africa, and then we plot that in a graph relative to Europe or relative to the United States and Canada, then we're seeing that there, typically, people, vitamin D levels, you're going to have about 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter, sometimes just shy of 100 nanograms per milliliter. Here in the United States, it's considered, as you mentioned, the RDA and the recommended dietary allowance and all these, but it's considered sufficient in the United States at 30 nanograms per milliliter, typically. And as you mentioned, I really enjoyed that, because you mentioned that is actually insufficiency. It's not sufficient, especially for people with more melanin in their skin. So we need, as African American people or anyone with more melanin, need at least right around 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter just to maintain our functional cellular function and cellular structure. What we found is that there's deficiency. Some of the people during the last 2 years, we see that their measurement of vitamin D levels is 15, some 7, some 0. And this is one of the things we contribute the pandemic to, just ravaging the African American community, the lack of vitamin D deficiency. I mean, it's a bad word to say proven, of course, with the allopathic reductionist model, but it is proven, because it's not even associative, it's causative. The last little comment too, I really enjoyed when you mentioned the inflammation. That inflammation is associated with 95% of the diseases or disease processes. What we're seeing that the precursor to inflammation itself is microscopic tissue damage, because of course there is no inflammation unless it's precursed by microscopic tissue. Yes, sir. The microscopic tissue damage. So of course, if there's the oxidative stress or ROS, reactive oxidative specimen, on the cell itself as a result of oxidation or free radical bombardment, then of course this is going to result in microscopic tissue damage, which then results in inflammation, and then the rest is history. So it's really want to just speak on those for just a moment, and we really, really are enjoying your show. You're a fantastic educator, and we hope that you just keep this up. Just keep it up.
Thank you. I tried. Doc, I really appreciate that. You really came in and you broke it down to a level that I cannot go, but I actually understood everything you was talking about. And it's so funny is that not the omega-3 show, the vitamin C show, in which I broke down the different types of vitamin C that they sell on the market and how vitamin C affects the body. I also went through the process explaining free radicals and how they affect, how they create inflammation in the body and it causes damage and things like that. So, Doc, you did a great job of explaining this. I hope everyone who's listening to this understand what the doc was saying. He really broke it down and gave you a much more in-depth information when it came down to vitamin D and all those other things like that. But this is why it's important. This is why it's important. It's simple. I know it sounds sometimes it seems how can I say? It seems very complicated, but it's really not. God made it very simple. Get some sunlight, eat healthy, and all the other things. And if you're working indoors, come on inside to the store and get yourself some vitamin D, 5,000 IUs a day at least. Okay? And I keep it simple like that. 2,000 to 5,000. If you're really low, get up a little higher too, even up to 7,000 to 10,000. But that's between you and your physician. But I say at least 2,000 to 5,000 a day to get you kind of balanced. We talked about the different types of vitamin D. You got the lanolin and fish oil, and we got the vitamin D2. And then there's different brands. Listen, vitamin D is not very expensive. Okay? There are brands out here that will charge you an arm and a leg, and they'll say food-based vitamin C. Vitamin D. I've seen vitamin D that's like 2,000 IUs. That's a tablet that's $25. Let me explain something to you. As a man who worked in the industry since 1994, that's a lot of money. Okay? That's a lot of money. A lot of times, it's most of the stuff you're buying is a filler. A 5,000 IU a drop of vitamin D is super small. 99% of the tablet is something else. Okay? So understand this. You're not paying for a lot of vitamin D a lot of times when you spend $26, $27 on vitamin D, $30 on vitamin D. You're spending it on 99% of everything else because vitamin D is such a small quantity. 5,000 IUs, or when you want to convert it to micrograms and things like that, like the doctor was saying, about 25 micrograms is equivalent to 1,000 IUs. So if you got 5,000 IUs, that's 125 micrograms of vitamin D. It's a very small amount. You have to understand 125 micrograms. Okay, we're talking the millions of a gram. Okay, so it's a small amount. So when you see huge prices on vitamin D, I will name some brands out there, but I don't want to do that. But sometimes they're just charging you a lot for adding bell pepper in there. Okay, that's not what you want to pay for. You just want a clean vitamin D. Okay, you want a clean vitamin D, and you don't want a lot of fillers. You want maybe 2 or 3 ingredients, maybe 4 maximum. Gelatin that makes the soft gel, maybe an oil that's in there, and the vitamin D itself. That's it. Or maybe just the soft gel and the oil itself. That's it. You want it to be very, very simple. You don't need oranges in your vitamin D. You don't need bell peppers and broccoli. You're paying for fillers. So that's the Health Man Show today. If anybody else has a question, because we usually off at 10 o'clock. If anybody else have a question, you are bound to ask a question before we get on. You got a couple of minutes. Go ahead. I see somebody who has somebody who's talking has a 9736961.
Yeah, that was me, brother. Okay, so this is Fars, Brother Abdul.
Yes, go ahead, brother.
I want to thank you for that presentation, brother. You know, I take my D3 every day. But I just wanted to say also, before you go off, I don't know if you know the brother that's coming on behind you tomorrow, but what we normally do is you just make mention of Brother Leon's show tomorrow. Well, I'm sorry, let me take that back. We have a new sister, Dr. Beverly, who's coming on tomorrow. So she comes on at 11 a.m. She has a split show, brother. Because she's allowed 2 hours. I offered you 2 hours, but you said 4 hours enough because you're the family man. Okay? And we all know that when you got grown sons, you can spend as much time as you want on the podcast. When you got younger ones, you got to tend to them, you know.
Yeah.
But I wanted to acquaint you with Dr. Beverly. All right, she's into metaphysics, and She also is going to do the visual Zoom demonstration. And just wanted to let you, just to remind you, brother, you already know you have a visual. So in case you ever want to put that big chalkboard up like Patrick Delves and point to different things on the chalkboard, you can, brother, just for future reference, you know.
Okay, no problem. Next time I'm going to share a screen with y'all. I know how to share the screen and let you see it. So we're getting there slow and steady. We slowly but surely improving the Health Man show. That's what we're doing. This is called the Health Man. I'm going to give y'all a slow and steady improvement. You know, I got the lights. I had a microphone that don't work really well, so I got to buy a new microphone. I'm going to probably have a picture in the background, and then maybe I might have dancing elephants or something. I don't know. I'm trying to improve it as we go along. As we go along, we're going to get better and better.
Yeah, we're going to get Carol a microphone because she asked for one, so we're going to get her one too, you know. Other than that, my brother, thank you once again, my brother. And less vacations and more getting up here, Psych.
Okay, no problem. Listen, we're going to...
I'm just joking, brother. Listen, when you're taking a vacation, you deserve it. I'm just kidding.
No. Listen, vacation is very important. But we're going to do the next week. We got a good topic next week. I'm thinking of doing something else. I don't know yet. I thought about doing it on diabetes or something like that and talking about nutritionally, how we deal with that and some of the root causes. But we may do that, or we may do vitamin D. I don't know. Right now I have a couple of topics I want to talk about. We got at least 2 months worth of topics that I have written up already. So we're going to have fun. So listen, I appreciate everybody.
Abdul, before you go, brother, I'm going to hold you up. I just want to ask you one quick thing. When I was down Whole Foods today, I was looking for something, for my green salad. I've been a vegan now. This August will make 10 years.
Okay.
And what happened was I was looking at there's a brand called Brewers, and I was looking at it. So this looks good. I got the USDA label on the organic, so I'm looking for an organic dressing. So the best way to make it like Rashad, make your own with the cashew cheese. I know how to make that. Sometimes I get a little lazy. And I read the ingredients. It said non-GMO milk. Can you explain what that is to the audience real quick before you go off, brother? I appreciate it.
Okay, so, nowadays you have genetically modified organisms. That's basically taking a gene or like a type of product from one animal or one product or one plant that does not naturally go inside of another plant. So when they have GMO milk, let's say GMO milk, a lot of times they use what they call BSE. It's like a bovine growth hormone that they inject a cow with. This makes the cow produce way more milk than naturally. It genetically modifies the cow to produce a lot more milk, to be much more muscular and everything like that. So when you get a product that has non-GMO milk, that cow has not been injected with that hormone that modifies that cow to produce much more milk. A lot of times when you get those type of hormones, it actually goes into the milk. It also goes into the milk, and you become a recipient of that hormone yourself too. So that's what that means. So when you want to avoid GMOs, you want to do more organic. Mainly organic is the best way, or you want to do things that actually has non-GMO verified on it or non-GMO. That's extremely important. So milk is one of the things you definitely want to look at to make sure you don't get an animal that's been genetically modified, that has been injected, because there's a lot of issues when it comes down to dealing with genetically modified. The science is newer. It's not new anymore. It's still newer, but they still don't know all the side effects that come with ingesting genetically modified. So I always say, if you don't know, it's better to wait, just go with the way it used to be, the natural way of doing it. So avoid genetically modified cows and milk and things like that, and soybean and corn and squash. It's a lot of genetically modified products nowadays. So you can avoid them. Try to avoid them as much as you can. So that's what I said.
Thank you. Hey, Brother Abdul, I want to say thank you. And before you take it off, I just want to remind my family, tomorrow, family, we have a morning show from 11 a.m. to 12 noon, Dr. Beverly. So please tune in and support it. It'll be our first time on. But thank you, Brother Abdul. So I'm turning it back over to you, my brother. Thank you.
Okay. So listen, it was great talking to everybody today. It was really cool. You getting me on my day back home. I had a great vacation. I had a great conversation with you about vitamin D. And next week we're going to do it even better. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Definitely check me out again on the Health Man Show at 9 o'clock on Sundays. And thank you for all being here. I hope to see you next week. We're going to have a better topic and bring someone else so they can learn. So we can and have questions for me. I'm in the health food field for 1994, 28 years. I've been doing this since I was in high school. So when it comes down to the health food industry, and I've been on all sides. So give me your questions, and I'll try my best to answer it the best I know how. Thank y'all for being a part of this show, and I will see you next week. God willing, God bless. All right, thank you.